Jean Bedel Bokassa was born on the 22nd of February 1921. He came to power in a coup in 1966. He was the second president of the Central African Republic, but he was not satisfied. A little over 10 years later, he changed the name of the Central African Republic to the Central African Empire, and he made himself the emperor. He wanted to be like Napoleon. He was now King Bokassa the First, Emperor of all Central Africa. Bokassa's father was beaten to death because of his anti-French beliefs, and his mother couldn't deal with that, and she committed suicide. So Bokassa was an orphan at the age of 6. He had extended family, and they sent him to a French Christian school, and later he joined the French colonial troops. He would fight with the French in World War II. After the war, he attended officers' training school and would fight in French Indonesia. While in French Indonesia, he married a Vietnamese lady and they had one child together. When he was called out of Vietnam, he would leave his wife and child behind because he was sure he was coming back to Vietnam on a second tour. He was promoted to captain, and after about 20 years, he would finally return home, just as his country was becoming independent. Bokassa would then leave the French army and join his country's military, and he was in charge of creating the new army which would take over in the Central African Republic. He quickly rose to colonel. Many of the president's advisors said that he had to make sure he kept an eye on Bokassa because he was going to lead a coup and take over the government. However, the president, Takako, stated that Bokassa, he was just too stupid to pull off a coup, and he just wanted to collect more medals. The president then began to worry a little bit after the insistence of the people around him that Bokassa was indeed going to take over. So he sent him to France on Bastille Day. And then, when Bokassa tried to come home, he would try to stop him from returning to the country. Bokassa, however, had a lot of friends in the French military due to his service, and President Dacko would have to back down. In December of 1965, Bokassa made his move and took control of the government. He released prisoners from out of the jail cells because he thought this would maybe help with his popularity, since so many people in prison were political prisoners. Upon taking office, he would close the National Assembly. He called it a lifeless organ. Of course, he did what dictators do, and he promised that after his reforms were complete, such as wiping out the communist threat and wiping out corruption, the assembly would come back, there'd be a new constitution, and of course, he would hold elections. He made men and women between the age of 18 and 55 prove that they had jobs or they would face fines and possible imprisonment. He sent these moral brigades around to monitor bars and other institutions. He banned polygamy, not, of course, for himself, but for everybody else. And he banned female circumcision. At first, people weren't recognizing his rule, but after some convincing, and after he cut ties with the Chinese communists, the rest of the world slowly began to recognize the government. Bokassa promoted himself now to general, and he also made himself president for life. Bokassa received help from both Gaddafi and France. France received uranium for their help. At Bokassa's ceremonial coronation in 1977, the French sent him 17 aircraft and sent members of the French Navy to help with the orchestra. The event lasted days and cost 20 million, or about a third of the entire budget of the country. Bokassa would sit on a 2-ton throne, modeled in the shape of an eagle and made of gilded bronze. Bokassa was trying to recreate the coronation of Napoleon for his own purposes. In this whole event, plus newspaper reports claiming that the French president, Giscard, was offered a few diamonds, would cost Giscard to lose his next election bid. He converted to Islam when Gaddafi promised aid, but this caused a problem with the French and Bokassa being crowned at the Catholic cathedral. If he's a Muslim, he's certainly not going to be coronated in a Catholic cathedral. So Bokassa then converted back to Catholicism. Most Western countries were viewing this with laughter and contempt. It came to a head when Bokassa tried to make students from grade school all the way up to the university wear uniforms that were made by one of his wife's companies. Riots broke out and students were shot down on the streets. Students who were arrested were beaten to death while in prison. Nations began cutting off all aid to Bokassa. The French sent troops in to overthrow him. He was allowed to claim exile in France due to his service in the French military, which proved to be an enormous embarrassment to France. Bokassa was tried in absentee, and he was sentenced to death, but the French allowed him to remain. He later decided, however, to return to the Central African Republic and, of course, was immediately arrested. He would be tried and he would be sentenced to life imprisonment, and it was later reduced to 20 years. He would serve only about 5 years of that sentence, however, because the president who left office in 1993 declared amnesty for all prisoners as one of his last acts in office. Bokassa did not live a long life, however. In 1996, after proclaiming that he was the 13th apostle, he died of a heart attack. He was 75 and had 17 wives and 50 children. If you like these short dictator videos, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for listening.